What if I told you that right now, in 2026, massive chunks of America are sitting completely empty? Not because of war, not because of disaster, but because nobody wants to live there. We're talking about states bigger than entire countries, with populations smaller than a single city neighborhood. Places where you can drive for hours without seeing another soul. Where towns that once thrived are now ghost versions of themselves. And here's what nobody's talking about. It's getting worse. Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a state with breathtaking mountains, endless plains, or pristine coastlines, and yet there's barely anyone around. The gas stations are few and far between. The schools are closing. And the young people? They left years ago and never looked back. These aren't just random empty spaces. These are entire states that America is quietly abandoning. And the reasons why will shock you. In today's deep dive, we're exposing the 9 emptiest states in America. The places where the American dream didn't just fade. It packed up and moved to Denver. We'll uncover why populations are dropping faster than the temperature in a Montana winter, why billion-dollar industries can't keep people from leaving, and why some of these states have crime rates, weather patterns, and economic realities that make living there feel more like survival. One state on this list has fewer people than Columbus, Ohio, despite being bigger than Texas. Another charges you more to live there than New York City, but offers you nothing except snow and isolation. And the number 1 spot? Let's just say even the government has trouble convincing people to stay. Stick around because this isn't just geography. This is the untold story of how America's map is reshaping itself right before our eyes. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why half of America feels like a beautiful, expensive, dangerous, or just plain lonely place that most people would rather admire from a distance than actually call home. Number 9, Vermont, the expensive ghost town with a maple syrup problem. Here's something wild. Vermont is one of the safest, most beautiful states in America, and yet almost nobody's moving there. In fact, people are leaving. With just 645,000 residents in 2026, Vermont's population has barely moved in decades. And when you dig into why, the picture gets darker than a January afternoon in Burlington. Let's start with the cost. You'd think a rural state with more cows than people would be affordable, right? Wrong. The median home price in Vermont is now pushing $385,000. That's higher than states with actual job markets. And we're not talking about luxury mountain estates here. We're talking about old farmhouses that need new roofs, septic systems, and prayers. But housing is just the beginning. Property taxes in Vermont rank among the highest in the nation. Heating bills during those brutal 6-month winters, easily $3,000 to $5,000 a year. Groceries cost more because everything has to be trucked in through winding mountain roads that turn into ice rinks every November. You're paying premium prices for a lifestyle that honestly feels frozen in 1987. And the economy? Let's be real. Vermont's job market is basically dairy farming, small businesses that barely survive, and seasonal tourism. The state produces over 60% of New England's milk, but dairy farms are dying, profits are down, labor is impossible to find, and young Vermonters who grow up milking cows at 5 a.m. are not sticking around to inherit the family struggle. The average household income sits around $67,000, which sounds okay until you realize it doesn't keep pace with the cost of living. You're working just as hard as someone in Boston, but earning 30% less and paying just as much to survive. It's a losing equation. Then there's the isolation. Vermont's largest city, Burlington, has 45,000 people. That's not a city. That's a large high school with a downtown. If you're under 40 and want nightlife, culture, or even just a Target that's open past 9 p.m., you're out of luck. The state has charm, sure. Fall foliage is gorgeous. Farmers markets are quaint. But charm doesn't pay student loans. And let's talk about the winters. We're not talking about a few snowstorms. We're talking about months of darkness, cold, and isolation that test your mental health. Temperatures regularly drop below zero. Snow buries your car. Roads become impassable. And unless you own a reliable 4-wheel drive vehicle and have the personality of a mountain hermit, it wears you down. Here's the kicker. Vermont markets itself as a progressive, sustainable, tight-knit community. And it is. But it's also aging rapidly. The median age is 43, one of the oldest in the nation. Young people are fleeing to cities where they can actually afford to live and build careers. The result? A state that feels more like a retirement community with really good cheese. So yeah, Vermont is safe. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. But it's also expensive, isolated, and stuck in a demographic death spiral. Most people visit for a weekend, snap some Instagram photos, and get back to civilization. Living there full-time? That's a whole different level of commitment. And in 2026, fewer and fewer people are willing to make it. But if you think Vermont's expensive isolation is rough, wait until you see what happens when a state combines brutal weather with an economy that depends entirely on oil and hope. Number 8. North Dakota. The frozen oil field where dreams go to hibernate. North Dakota is the kind of place where standing in the middle of the street isn't dangerous because there's literally nobody around to hit you. With just 779,000 people scattered across 70,000 square miles, this is one of the emptiest, coldest, and frankly, weirdest places to try to build a life in America. Let's talk about the economy first because it explains everything. North Dakota's entire existence basically revolves around oil and agriculture. During the Bakken oil boom of the 2010s, the state exploded. Workers flooded in, wages soared, towns couldn't build housing fast enough. It felt like a gold rush, except with fracking rigs and man camps. But here's the thing about boom economies. They bust. Oil prices dropped, companies pulled out, and all those workers who came for six-figure jobs, they left just as fast. What remains is a state that's still heavily dependent on oil revenue, which makes the economy as stable as a house of cards in a wind tunnel. When oil is up, North Dakota feels rich. When it's down, the state hemorrhages jobs, population, and hope. Agriculture is the other pillar, and it's just as unstable. Wheat and sunflowers dominate the landscape, but farming here is brutal. You're fighting droughts, early frosts, and commodity prices that swing wildly. The average farm income is unpredictable, and young people aren't lining up to take over family farms that barely break even. The median household income is around $68,000, which sounds decent until you factor in the cost of survival. Housing is affordable, sure. The median home price is about $265,000. But affordability doesn't matter when there's nothing to do and nowhere to go. Let's talk about the weather because this is where North Dakota really earns its reputation. Winters here aren't just cold, they're punishing. Temperatures regularly plunge to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Blizzards shut down entire towns for days. Schools close, businesses shut. Even the post office gives up. And this isn't a week or two. This is 5 to 6 months of your life spent battling cold so severe it feels personal. Fargo, the state's largest city, has about 127,000 people. It's the big city of North Dakota, which tells you everything you need to know. It's got a Costco, a mall, and a Main Street that feels like it's stuck in a time loop. If you're looking for culture, diversity, or anything resembling urban energy, you're going to be disappointed. And the social scene? North Dakota has fewer than 1,000 restaurants statewide. Compare that to New York City's 25,000. Going out to eat means driving 40 minutes to the same Applebee's you've been to, 100 times. Entertainment is high school football, church potlucks, and hoping the Walmart gets a new video game before Christmas. Crime is low, which is great. The air is clean, community spirit is strong. But here's the truth. North Dakota is a place where you can save money, own land, and live quietly. But it's also a place where you'll spend half the year frozen indoors, wondering why you didn't just move to Minneapolis. For most Americans, North Dakota is a flyover state in the most literal sense. You see it from 30,000 feet, maybe admire the patchwork farmland, and then keep flying. Because living there, that's a different story. And unless you're deeply committed to solitude, oil rigs, or wheat, it's not a story most people want to be part of. If North Dakota's frozen isolation sounds tough, buckle up. Because the next state somehow manages to be even emptier, even colder, and even harder to justify. Number 7. South Dakota. The tourist trap with no tourists left behind. South Dakota is one of those states that people love to visit but never actually consider living in. And once you dig into the numbers, it's easy to see why. With just 919,000 people spread across 77,000 square miles, this is a state where you're more likely to see a bison than a neighbor. On the surface, South Dakota has appeal. Mount Rushmore, the Badlands, Custer State Park. These landmarks draw millions of tourists every year. But here's the problem. Tourism is seasonal, unreliable, and doesn't pay well. Most of the jobs tied to tourism are low-wage, part-time gigs that disappear the moment summer ends. If you're trying to build a career or raise a family, good luck. The state's economy leans heavily on agriculture, and it's not pretty. Farming and ranching dominate, but commodity prices are volatile. Droughts hit hard, and the average farm in South Dakota is barely profitable. Many families are one bad harvest away from selling out to corporate agriculture giants. The median household income is around $64,000, which is below the national average. And while housing is affordable, with a median price of $285,000, affordability loses its appeal when your career options are limited to Walmart, a regional hospital, or driving a tractor. Then there's the weather. South Dakota doesn't mess around. Winters bring sub-zero temperatures, blizzards, and ice storms that shut down highways for days. But summers? Equally brutal. Temperatures soar into the 90s and beyond. Severe thunderstorms roll through with hail the size of golf balls. And tornadoes. South Dakota averages 36 tornadoes per year. That's not a typo. You're living in a state where the weather is actively trying to kill you. Let's talk about infrastructure, or rather, the lack of it. Many parts of South Dakota are so rural that high-speed internet is a fantasy. Cell service? Spotty at best. If you're a remote worker thinking you can live in the Badlands and Zoom into meetings, think again. You'll be lucky if your video doesn't freeze mid-sentence. And the social scene? Sioux Falls, the state's largest city, has about 200,000 people. It's got a decent downtown, some breweries, and a couple of good restaurants. But it's not exactly a cultural hotspot. Once you've seen the falls and tried the local burger joint, you've pretty much exhausted the entertainment options. For young people, South Dakota is a dead end. The job market is stagnant, the nightlife is non-existent, and the opportunities for growth are limited unless you're content working in agriculture or retail for the rest of your life. Most graduates leave for Denver, Minneapolis, or anywhere with an actual economy. But here's the thing. South Dakota isn't a bad place. It's peaceful. Crime rates are low. The cost of living is manageable. And if you're into hunting, fishing, or just being left alone, it's paradise. But for the average American looking for opportunity, community, and a future, South Dakota feels more like a layover than a destination. People visit to see Mount Rushmore, snap a photo, and move on. And that's exactly how most Americans treat the entire state. It's a place you pass through, not a place you stay. And if you thought South Dakota's tornadoes were intense, the next state takes extreme weather to a whole new level. We're talking about a place where surviving winter is basically a full-time job. Number 6, Maine. The lobster state that lost its young people. Maine is postcard beautiful. Rocky coastlines, lighthouses, endless forests, lobster rolls that could make you cry. But behind the tourism brochures, Maine is quietly emptying out. With just 1.37 million people in 2026, it's one of the oldest, slowest growing states in America. And the reasons why reveal a deeper problem. Let's start with the economy. Maine's economic engine runs on 3 things: tourism, fishing, and forestry. Tourism brings in money during the summer months. The rest of the year? Dead. The fishing industry, particularly lobster, is huge. Maine produces over 100 million pounds of lobster annually, but it's a grueling, dangerous job with unpredictable income. And forestry? That industry has been in decline for decades. The median household income in Maine is about $63,000. That's below the national average. And while the cost of living is supposed to be lower in rural areas, Maine breaks that rule. The median home price is now around $330,000. That's not affordable for young families, especially when wages are stagnant and job options are limited. Property taxes are high. Heating costs are astronomical. Maine winters aren't just cold, they're expensive. You're burning through oil or propane just to keep your pipes from freezing. Utility bills can easily top $400 a month in the winter. Add in car insurance, because Maine's roads are rough, and you're bleeding money just to survive. And speaking of winter, let's talk about the weather. Maine gets over 70 inches of snow per year. Temperatures regularly drop below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And the winter doesn't just last a month or two. It starts in November and doesn't let up until April. That's 5 months of icy roads, frozen car doors, and seasonal depression. But here's the deeper issue. Maine is aging rapidly. The median age is 45, one of the oldest in the nation. Young people are fleeing. Why? Because there's no opportunity. Portland, the state's largest city, has about 68,000 people. It's charming. It's got good food. But it's not a job market. Most young Mainers leave for Boston, New York, or anywhere with a real economy. The result? Towns are shrinking. Schools are closing. Main streets are boarded up. Maine has one of the highest percentages of rural population in the U.S., and many of those rural areas are dying. Drive through towns like Millinocket or Rumford, and you'll see the remnants of industries that left decades ago. Healthcare is another nightmare. Maine has a severe shortage of doctors, especially in rural areas. If you need specialized care, you're driving hours to Portland or even crossing into New Hampshire. For elderly residents, this is a crisis. And with the population aging, it's only getting worse. Crime is low, the natural beauty is undeniable, and if you're a retiree looking for peace and lobster, Maine is great. But if you're young, ambitious, or just trying to build a future, Maine feels like a trap. You're stuck in a state with no jobs, brutal winters, and a cost of living that doesn't match the quality of life. Most people visit Maine for a week in the summer. They eat lobster, kaya, along the coast, and think, this is amazing. Then they go home, because living there full-time, that's a completely different reality. And in 2026, fewer and fewer people are willing to sign up for it. But if Maine's isolation feels heavy, the next state takes it to the extreme. We're talking about a place so empty that the word neighbor is measured in miles, not houses. Number 5, Montana. Big sky country, big population problem. Montana, also called Big Sky Country, is as stunning as it is empty. Spanning over 147,000 square miles, it's the 4th largest state in America. Yet fewer than 1.6 million people live here. That's fewer people than San Antonio, Texas, spread across a space the size of Germany. And when you understand why, it all starts to make sense. First, the economy. Montana relies heavily on agriculture, mining, and tourism. Ranching and wheat farming dominate the landscape, but these industries aren't exactly booming. Commodity prices swing wildly, droughts hit hard, and most farms and ranches are family-owned operations barely scraping by. The mining industry has seen better days, and tourism, while strong in places like Glacier National Park, is seasonal and doesn't provide year-round stability. The median household income is about $61,000, well below the national average. And while housing costs seem reasonable at a median price of $375,000, that's misleading. In cities like Bozeman and Missoula, home prices have exploded due to an influx of wealthy out-of-state buyers. Locals are being priced out of their own communities. Meanwhile, in rural areas, you can buy land for cheap, but good luck finding a job. Then there's the infrastructure problem. Much of Montana is extremely rural. We're talking about towns with populations under 500, separated by 50 miles of empty highway. High-speed internet? Forget it. Cell service? Maybe if you're lucky. If you're trying to work remotely or run a business, you're fighting an uphill battle against technology that hasn't caught up. Now, the weather. Montana winters are no joke. Temperatures can drop to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Snowstorms are frequent and severe. In places like Havre and Great Falls, blizzards can shut down entire regions for days, and the winter lasts from October through April. That's 6 months of brutal cold. But it's not just the cold. Montana has one of the highest wildfire risks in the country. Every summer, massive fires burn across thousands of acres. Air quality plummets, smoke blankets entire valleys, and the fear of losing your home to a wildfire is real. Insurance companies are pulling out of Montana because the risk is too high. If you can even get coverage, it's expensive. And let's talk about wildlife. Montana is home to grizzly bears, mountain lions, wolves, and moose. These aren't zoo animals. They're in your backyard. Hiking alone? You better carry bear spray. Letting your dog out at night? Hope it doesn't meet a mountain lion. This isn't fear-mongering. This is reality. Montana wildlife doesn't mess around. The job market is another issue. Outside of Billings, Missoula, and Bozeman, there's not much. Most employment is in healthcare, education, or resource extraction. If you're in tech, finance, or any other industry, you're going to struggle. The state's population density is so low that businesses simply can't justify opening locations here. And socially, Montana is isolated. Cities are few and far between. If you live in a rural area, your nearest neighbor might be miles away. Going to the grocery store is a 45-minute drive. Seeing a movie? Good luck. Montana is beautiful, but it's also lonely. Here's the truth. Montana attracts two kinds of people: wealthy retirees looking for a mountain escape and outdoor enthusiasts willing to sacrifice modern conveniences for pristine wilderness. Everyone else leaves. Young people grow up in Montana, graduate, and move to Denver, Seattle, or anywhere with jobs and opportunity. Montana isn't dying, but it's not growing either. The population is stagnant, aging, and increasingly divided between rich transplants and locals who can't afford to stay. It's a state that looks incredible on Instagram but feels isolating in real life. And unless you're okay with harsh winters, limited opportunities, and genuine solitude, Montana is better admired from a distance. But if Montana's isolation feels intense, the next state takes emptiness to the next level. We're talking about a place where the population density is so low, you could fit every resident in a mid-sized football stadium. Number 4, Alaska. The final frontier that nobody wants to settle. Alaska is the largest state in the U.S. It's massive, over 665,000 square miles. You could fit Texas inside it twice, and yet only about 732,000 people live there. That's roughly 1 person per square mile. To put that in perspective, New Jersey has over 1,200 people per square mile. Alaska is empty. Beautiful, yes, but empty. And when you dig into why, it's not hard to understand. Now, living in Alaska is expensive, isolated, and in many ways, extreme. Let's start with the cost. Alaska ranks among the most expensive states to live in. The median home price is around $330,000, which might not sound crazy until you realize that groceries, gas, and utilities cost significantly more than the rest of the country. Why? Because almost everything has to be shipped or flown in. A gallon of milk can cost $6, a loaf of bread, $5. Fresh produce? Forget about it. Most Alaskans rely on frozen or canned goods because fresh food is either unavailable or prohibitively expensive. And if you live in a rural area, costs skyrocket even more. Villages off the road system pay double or triple for basic necessities. Energy costs are brutal. Heating your home during Alaska's long winters can cost $4,000 to $6,000 per year. And that's not optional. Winters here last from October to April, and temperatures regularly drop below zero. In northern regions like Barrow, temperatures can plunge to minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, exposed skin freezes in minutes. Then there's the darkness. During winter, parts of Alaska experience 24 hours of darkness for weeks on end. The sun doesn't rise, it's perpetually night. This wreaks havoc on mental health. Seasonal affective disorder is rampant, depression rates are high, and alcohol abuse is a serious problem across the state. But summer is almost equally weird. In summer, the sun barely sets. Some areas get 22 hours of daylight. While that sounds cool, it messes with your sleep schedule. Your body has no idea when to rest. People cover windows with blackout curtains just to sleep. The job market in Alaska is limited. The state's economy relies heavily on oil, fishing, and tourism. The oil industry is the biggest player, but it's volatile. When oil prices drop, Alaska's budget collapses, leading to cuts in public services, education, and infrastructure. The fishing industry is strong, but it's seasonal and physically demanding. Tourism brings in money during the summer, but it's not a year-round income source. The median household income is around $77,000, which is higher than the national average. But again, that income is offset by the insane cost of living. You're making more, but you're also spending more just to survive. Infrastructure is another massive issue. Alaska has very few roads. Most of the state is inaccessible by car. If you want to visit another town, you're flying or taking a boat. This isolation is romantic in theory, but in practice, it's a nightmare. Medical emergencies require expensive airlifts. Ordering anything online takes weeks, and forget about same-day delivery. Crime is another problem. Alaska has one of the highest violent crime rates in the nation. Assault and domestic violence are particularly prevalent, especially in rural areas where law enforcement is sparse. If you call 911 in some villages, help might not arrive for hours or even days. And then there's the wildlife. Alaska is home to grizzly bears, polar bears, moose, and wolves. These animals are everywhere. Moose are responsible for more injuries than bears because they're massive, unpredictable, and surprisingly aggressive. Running into a moose in your driveway isn't rare. It's Tuesday. So why does anyone live in Alaska? Some people love the wilderness, the adventure, the challenge. Others are there for high-paying jobs in oil or fishing. And some are born there and feel connected to the land. But for most Americans, Alaska is a place you visit once, marvel at the scenery, and then go home. The state offers a permanent fund dividend, basically free money from oil revenue, which pays residents about $1,000 to $2,000 per year. That's nice, but it's not enough to offset the cost of living or the isolation. Alaska is beautiful, it's rugged, it's wild, but it's not livable for most people. And in 2026, the state's population is barely growing. People move there for the adventure, realize the cost, and leave. Alaska is the ultimate American frontier. But frontiers, by definition, are places people pass through, not places they stay. If Alaska's isolation feels extreme, the next state proves that sometimes wide-open spaces aren't just empty, they're economically broken. Number 3. Wyoming, the least populated state with the most billionaires. Wyoming is the least populous state in America, with just 584,000 people scattered across 97,000 square miles. It's emptier than most people realize. That's about 6 people per square mile. You can drive for an hour on Wyoming highways and not see a single other car. It's that empty. And when you dig into why, the picture gets complicated. Wyoming's economy is almost entirely dependent on natural resources. Coal, oil, and natural gas dominate. When commodity prices are high, Wyoming feels rich. The state has no income tax, and for a while, everything seemed great. But here's the problem. The coal industry is dying. Mines are closing, jobs are disappearing, and the state hasn't diversified enough to replace that lost revenue. The median household income is about $65,000, which is decent but not great considering the lack of career diversity. If you're not working in energy, ranching, or government, your options are limited. The largest city, Cheyenne, has just 65,000 people. It's the big city of Wyoming, and it feels like a large town. Housing is affordable. The median home price is around $285,000. But affordability doesn't matter when there's nothing to do and nowhere to go. Wyoming has no major metro areas, no thriving art scene, no nightlife. Entertainment is hunting, fishing, and hoping the local bar has karaoke night. Then there's the isolation. Wyoming is geographically massive but socially tiny. If you live in a rural area, your nearest neighbor might be 10 miles away. Getting groceries is a 30-minute drive. Seeing a doctor? Longer. And if you need specialized medical care, you're driving hours to Denver or Salt Lake City. The weather is punishing. Winters are long, cold, and windy. Temperatures drop below zero regularly. Snowstorms shut down highways. And the wind. Wyoming wind is relentless. It doesn't just blow, it screams. Driving in winter feels like piloting a vehicle through a frozen hurricane. But summer isn't much better. Temperatures spike into the 90s. Wildfires are common, and the lack of humidity makes everything feel brittle and dry. Wyoming doesn't have seasons, it has extremes. The state's population is stagnant and aging. Young people leave for college and never come back. Why would they? There are no jobs, no culture, no opportunity. Most Wyoming natives who want a career end up in Denver, Bozeman, or further out. And here's the twist. Wyoming is becoming a tax haven for the ultra-rich. Billionaires are buying massive ranches because there's no income tax and plenty of privacy. Jackson Hole is now one of the wealthiest zip codes in America. But that wealth doesn't trickle down. It creates a weird divide where millionaires and billionaires live in luxury compounds while working-class Wyomingites struggle to afford rising costs. Wyoming is beautiful. Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park attract millions of tourists every year. But tourists visit. They don't stay. And that's the problem. Wyoming's economy relies on tourism, but it doesn't build the infrastructure or opportunities needed to retain residents. So Wyoming remains empty, not because it's unlivable, but because it's isolating, economically fragile, and socially stagnant. It's a state where you can own land, see the stars, and live in peace. But for most Americans, that's not enough. If Wyoming feels frozen in time, the next state proves that sometimes being beautiful isn't enough to make people stay. Property taxes are brutal. Because New Hampshire doesn't have income or sales tax, it relies heavily on property taxes to fund schools, roads, and services. The average property tax rate is among the highest in the nation. You might save on income tax, but you're paying it back and then some through your property bill. Utilities are expensive. Heating a home during New Hampshire's long winters can cost $3,000 to $5,000 per year. And winters here are harsh. Temperatures drop below zero, snow piles up, roads freeze. If you're not prepared, you're in trouble. The job market is narrow. New Hampshire's economy relies on manufacturing, healthcare, and tourism. If you're not in one of those industries, you're commuting to Boston, which means sitting in traffic for 2 hours a day. The median household income is around $81,000, which sounds good until you realize it barely keeps up with the cost of living. And let's talk about isolation. New Hampshire's largest city, Manchester, has about 115,000 people. It's small. The state lacks the cultural vibrancy, diversity, and energy of larger metros. If you want nightlife, arts, or just options, you're driving to Boston. But if you're commuting to Boston for work and fun, why are you living in New Hampshire? The state is aging rapidly. The median age is 43. Young people are leaving because there's no opportunity. College graduates move to Boston, New York, or Portland and never come back. What's left is an aging population that's increasingly isolated. Socially, New Hampshire is quiet. Too quiet. Small towns are charming but insular. Everyone knows everyone, which sounds nice until you realize it also means everyone knows your business. Privacy is limited, and if you're not from there, you're an outsider. New Hampshire has natural beauty. The White Mountains are stunning. Fall foliage is world-class. But beauty doesn't pay the bills. And in 2026, the state is stuck in a strange place. It's too expensive for young families, too isolated for professionals, and too small for anyone looking for opportunity. Most people visit New Hampshire to hike, ski, or escape the city for a weekend. But living there full-time? That's a different story. And fewer people are willing to trade affordability and opportunity for tax-free living in the woods. If New Hampshire's high costs surprised you, the #1 state is about to blow your mind. Because this one has everything: space, beauty, and emptiness so profound it feels intentional. Number 2, New Hampshire, the tax-free state that's too expensive to live in. New Hampshire loves to brag about having no income tax and no sales tax. It markets itself as a libertarian paradise where you can live free or die. And on paper, that sounds amazing. But in reality, New Hampshire is quietly becoming one of the least affordable, most isolating states in America. Let's start with housing. The median home price in New Hampshire is now over $410,000. That's higher than the national average, way higher. And we're not talking about luxury homes in Portsmouth. We're talking about old houses that need work in towns you've never heard of. The housing market has been driven up by wealthy out-of-state buyers fleeing Massachusetts and New York, and locals are getting crushed. Property taxes are brutal. Because New Hampshire doesn't have income or sales tax, it relies heavily on property taxes to fund schools, roads, and services. The average property tax rate is among the highest in the nation. You might save on income tax, but you're paying it back and then some through your property bill. Utilities are expensive. Heating a home during New Hampshire's long winters can cost $3,000 to $5,000 per year. And winters here are harsh. Temperatures drop below zero, snow piles up, roads freeze. If you're not prepared, you're in trouble. The job market is narrow. New Hampshire's economy relies on manufacturing, healthcare, and tourism. If you're not in one of those industries, you're commuting to Boston, which means sitting in traffic for 2 hours a day. The median household income is around $81,000, which sounds good until you realize it barely keeps up with the cost of living. And let's talk about isolation. New Hampshire's largest city, Manchester, has about 115,000 people. It's small. The state lacks the cultural vibrancy, diversity, and energy of larger metros. If you want nightlife, arts, or just options, you're driving to Boston. But if you're commuting to Boston for work and fun, why are you living in New Hampshire? The state is aging rapidly. The median age is 43. Young people are leaving because there's no opportunity. College graduates move to Boston, New York, or Portland and never come back. What's left is an aging population that's increasingly isolated. Socially, New Hampshire is quiet. Too quiet. Small towns are charming but insular. Everyone knows everyone, which sounds nice until you realize it also means everyone knows your business. Privacy is limited, and if you're not from there, you're an outsider. New Hampshire has natural beauty. The White Mountains are stunning. Fall foliage is world-class. But beauty doesn't pay the bills. And in 2026, the state is stuck in a strange place. It's too expensive for young families, too isolated for professionals, and too small for anyone looking for opportunity. Most people visit New Hampshire to hike, ski, or escape the city for a weekend. But living there full-time? That's a different story. And fewer people are willing to trade affordability and opportunity for tax-free living in the woods. If New Hampshire's high costs surprised you, the #1 state is about to blow your mind. Because this one has everything: space, beauty, and emptiness so profound it feels intentional. #1, Wyoming. Wait. No, it's Alaska again? No, let me correct that. #1, West Virginia, the state America forgot. Wait, let me clarify. Based on the data, the #1 emptiest and most challenged state is actually a tie depending on how you measure it. But let's talk about the state that embodies every problem we've discussed: isolation, economic collapse, aging population, and a future that feels uncertain at best. That state is West Virginia. West Virginia has a population of about 1.7 million, and it's been shrinking for years. It's not just stagnant, it's actively losing people. And when you look at why, it's a perfect storm of economic devastation, geographic isolation, and systemic failure. The economy is broken. West Virginia's identity was built on coal mining. For generations, coal powered the state. It provided jobs, funded schools, and built communities. But coal is dying. Mines are closing, companies are bankrupt, and nothing has replaced it. The median household income is about $50,000, the lowest in the nation. Poverty rates are among the highest. The job market is bleak. If you're not in healthcare, education, or what's left of mining, you're out of luck. There's no tech industry, no major corporations, no startups. Young people graduate and leave immediately because there's nothing to stay for. Housing is cheap. The median home price is around $145,000. But cheap housing doesn't matter when there are no jobs. You can own a home outright and still struggle to survive because wages are so low. Infrastructure is crumbling. Roads are in terrible condition. Bridges are old and unsafe. Internet access is limited. Many parts of West Virginia feel like they've been frozen in time, not in a charming way, but in a neglected, forgotten way. The health crisis is severe. West Virginia has one of the highest rates of opioid addiction in the country. Life expectancy is among the lowest. Obesity, diabetes, and heart disease are rampant. The healthcare system is overwhelmed, and many rural areas have no access to doctors or hospitals. And the brain drain is devastating. Every year, the state's brightest young people leave for college and never come back. They go to Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, anywhere with opportunity. What's left is an aging, struggling population with no clear path forward. West Virginia is beautiful. The Appalachian Mountains are stunning. The culture is rich. But beauty and culture can't fix an economy. And in 2026, West Virginia feels less like a state and more like a cautionary tale of what happens when industry dies and nothing replaces it. So there you have it. 9 states that are emptying out for reasons that range from brutal weather to economic collapse. These aren't just numbers. These are real communities struggling with real problems. And unless something changes, these states will continue to lose people, resources, and hope. What do you think? Could you live in any of these states? Or are they places you'd only visit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this eye-opening, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started.